Hello, welcome all to our closing session of the fourth annual GRASFI conference. My name is Mengdi Yue. I'm the researcher at the International Institute of Green Finance at Central University of Finance and Economics in China. It is my great honor to moderate the closing session. Please note that this session is being recorded and will be available on demand for you within the platform. In this session, we will start with a closing keynote, followed by the paper prize ceremony, and end with closing remarks, as well as a handover to GRASFI 2022. First, I want to give a big welcome to Dr. Ma Jun for the closing keynote. Dr. Ma Jun is the chairman of the Green Finance Committee, China Society for Finance and Banking. He is the president of Institute of Finance and Sustainability, co-chairman of the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group, and the former member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the People's Bank of China. As a leader in the field of green and sustainable finance, Dr. Ma Jun also serves as the Sustainable Finance Special Advisor of the United Nations Environment Program, chairman of the Regulatory Working Group of NGFS, the director of Beijing Green Finance Association, the director of Hong Kong Green Finance Association, and many other public welfare duties. Dr. Ma, we are so glad to have you here today. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mandy. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. First of all, let me thank Professor Wang Yao for inviting me to join this very important conference, and congratulations to GRASFI for hosting a series of virtual sessions in the past few days on important aspects of sustainable finance. It's really my honor and pleasure to be part of this discussion. As Mandy was introducing, I was involved in mainly policy aspects of the green sustainable finance issues. In fact, in last few years, I was leading the drafting of the Chinese Green Finance Guideline. I led the drafting of the Chinese Green Bond Taxonomy, the first version. And also I co-chair the G20 Sustainable Finance Study Group, which is now upgraded to a working group. So a lot of policy issues domestically and international coordination issues. But I do enjoy talking to academicians because I strongly believe that many of the policies need to be supported by empirical study, by data, and we need to have a framework rather than thinking piecemeal. And we need to test causality between different variables. Just give you one example why I need support from a lot of academic work. I was talking to a lot of local governments in China and trying to convince them that you should think about subsidizing green loans, which in fact it will help you generate more fiscal revenue in the longer term. Now, this is not a very easy point because the initial reaction from the fiscal authority or local government is if you're asking me to subsidize green loans, for example, 0.5%, 1% of interest payments, who is going to cover your cost? And when I'm going to recover the cost of spending on the subsidy. So I used a couple of case studies which shows that if you subsidize interest payments for green loans this year, let's say by putting in 100 million RMB, you will get 500 million back in your fiscal revenue because this kind of subsidy has been proven by empirical evidence that they are generating much stronger growth of green loans in the region, and therefore generating stronger economic activities in the green economy, and therefore fiscal revenues in the coming few years. And that payback could be a multiple of what you put in this year. So this is a kind of conversation which requires a lot of study and academic study as well. That's why I really enjoy having the opportunity today to talk to members of the GRASFI on many of the interesting issues which we're facing internationally, and of course in specific countries like China. So in the coming 10-15 minutes, I'd like to cover two aspects of sustainable finance issues which I'm deeply involved. One is at international level, including the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group, which I'm co-chairing with my counterpart from the US Treasury. And the NGFS, I'm sure you are aware of that. It's a platform for collaboration between central banks and the supervisors. And the IPSF, that's International Platform for Sustainable Finance, and ISO, International Standard Organization, and also GIP, that's Green Investment Principle for the Belt and Road, which is one of the very few platforms for promoting green sustainable finance in emerging markets. I will give you some of updates on what's going on under these platforms and some of the interesting issues that you may be devoting some resource to help analyzing. Now, on the G20 side, if you remember, it started in 2016 when China was the presidency of the G20. We initiated this G20 Green Finance Study Group. That's what it's initially called. And I had the honor to co-chair this group together with Michael Sharon from Bank of England for 3 years between 2016 and 2018. And during these 3 years, we successfully mobilized a global consensus, which I can call global political consensus, to support the scaling up of green finance. And we pointed out a large number of issues that need to be tackled, including greening the banking system, greening the bond market, greening institutional investors, the need for analyzing environmental and climate risks, and the need for developing green assets that's suitable for the capital markets, and need to use fintech or digital technology to enhance the efficiency of sustainable finance. So many of these ideas were promoted under the G20 group in the period of 2016 and 2018, and they are mainstreamed in many ways. Some are adopted by governments as policy framework, some are adopted by institutions as way of developing their business lines and the methodologies and so on and so forth. Now this year, the interesting development is that the G20 decided to upgrade this study group to a working group, which means that the importance is fully appreciated. A working group is a permanent mechanism, which means that it's not very easy for any member of the G20 to decide to not doing this. And also a working group has a profile to make recommendations rather than just developing options as we did in the study group. So this year, I'm once again co-chairing the working group together with my US counterpart from Treasury. And we've been working on the agenda for this year for the last 9 months already, and looking forward to a conclusion of this year's work program by end of October. And what we have in this year's program are 4 major items. Number 1, we're developing a G20 Sustainable Finance Roadmap, which will guide the G20 and relevant IO's work in the space for the coming 5 years. And there'll be a lot of coordination issues that we are addressing in the document of roadmap. And the second, third, and the fourth pieces for this year's work agenda are rather specific. We're working on alignment approach, which include taxonomy, ESG rating methodologies, verification approach, on how to enhance comparability, consistency, and eventual convergence of these methodologies. The other major item under this year's agenda is on the development of an internationally accepted standard for sustainability reporting, which will be undertaken by ISSB, International Sustainability Standard Board. And we will be looking into options on how to develop a building block approach so that under that approach, the reporting standard framework will be accommodating the different needs and the country or market situations, depending on the maturity of the market, the size of the economy, size of the company, and the capacities. The last item under this year's program is on ways to enhance the role of MDBs, Multinational Development Bank, in delivering climate change objectives. So all of these are very much policy-oriented issues, but let me highlight just a couple of them, which I think are so important and requires global coordination, especially suitable for G20. Now, one of them is taxonomy. Back 6-7 years ago, when we began the G20 study group on green finance, we were complaining about the lack of taxonomy. As all of you know, taxonomy is the basis for green sustainable finance because it defines what is green, and it measures the performance, helps measure performance, and also helps identifying the right activities for the government to allocate incentives, and also helps prevent greenwashing. So most countries have recognized the need for taxonomy. And in the past few years, we have seen a proliferation of taxonomies for sustainable finance. And recently, what I heard from the ISO discussion is that there are 200 taxonomies already in the world. This is equivalent of having 200 languages for the same market. And if you allow this inconsistency proliferation to continue, it will create a lot of transaction costs between players in the sustainable finance market because different people are talking about different kinds of greenness, SDG alignment, and ESG concepts. And in order to avoid that transaction cost and confusion and market segmentation, we need to work towards improving the consistency, comparability, interoperability of different alignment approach, including taxonomies. And that's why we are considering a couple of options in that direction. Just give you a few examples of the potential options. One is when a country or jurisdiction is developing a new taxonomy, we will be encouraging them to develop taxonomy using an internationally recognized industrial classification, which, for example, include the UN-endorsed International Standard Industrial Classification. Just suppose every country's taxonomy is developed using its own classification, then these taxonomies cannot talk to each other. That was, in fact, a problem when we initially compared the Chinese and European taxonomy, because both of them are developed against a different classification. And we spent roughly 9 months to map these taxonomy into the same classification, then began the comparison and the work on convergence. So the first recommendation is to using a smaller number of internationally recognized industrial classification, which we call the same language, to draft your taxonomy. And the second idea is to encourage voluntary adoption of some taxonomies, which could be called reference taxonomy or common ground taxonomy, so that we can reduce unnecessary development of new taxonomies. And the third idea is to encourage a particular region, for example, the African region, to develop a common taxonomy. In places like Africa, there are many economies. Most of them are relatively small and with limited liquidity in terms of capital markets transaction. And it just doesn't make sense from my perspective to develop 50 different taxonomies. And a unified taxonomy will work much better and enhance efficiency, transparency, and reduce transaction cost. So for regions like that, we are encouraging organizations such as MDB to help them to develop a common taxonomy for the entire region. This is just one example of the type of issue that G20 should be coordinating, because with the G20 support or endorsement, countries involved will be relatively more inclined to form a network to collaborate on issues that otherwise would involve a lot of transaction costs and frictions. And the other example is reporting standards. As you know, there are lots of sustainability-related reporting standards, initiatives, principles, guidelines, and some are focusing on climate, some focusing on environment, some are talking about biodiversity, and some are voluntary, some are semi-voluntary, some are compulsory, and some may be suitable for big companies and not for smaller companies. Others are thinking about developing apps that can be used for SMEs. So again, it's a very fragmented landscape for reporting. Just imagine if a fund manager managing portfolio of companies coming from 30 different countries, and each of them is using different reporting standards to report SDG or ESG or sustainability related information. It's a lot of transaction costs. And that's why the G20 is now looking into this particular issue of developing a globally consistent reporting framework for sustainability. Let me give you probably one or two more examples on topics under the G20 discussion. One of them is the macro implication of climate risks and the climate policies. Clearly, I think this requires a lot of academic input because macroeconomic modeling will have to be involved. Otherwise, any talks are very, very cheap because they're only conceptual in nature. And the type of macro implication we're thinking about arising from various policy actions, for example, carbon taxation, carbon pricing, border adjustment tax, and so on. We need to look at impact on GDP, on inflation, on income distribution, and on cross-border spillover effect. And for these works to be relatively credible and convincing, we need to have analytical tools, including models such as maybe DST model, maybe CG model, maybe integrated assessment model, and a combination of many of these, plus more updated data and integration with energy transition analysis. So this is actually one very specific question I'm asking our members in GRASFI, see whether you can help contributing your talents and methodologies to this very important discussion. Now, the other example I am thinking, which requires a G20 and high-level coordination, is the mix of policy tools. How can we make sure that this mix of policies can successfully achieve the carbon neutrality goal that many countries have been committing to? We can use so many tools. For example, as I mentioned, the carbon taxation, carbon pricing, and regulation for energy, for building, for transportation, for manufacturing. And we can use the incentive to support green investment, disincentive to reduce the brown investments, for example, including through the adjustment of risk weights for bank assets. So there are numerous policy options, and how can we put them together into an optimal basket so that they can achieve the desirable net zero target within a period of time, for example, 30 years for most of OECD countries, 40 years for many developing countries, rather than overdoing it or underdoing it. Again, this requires a lot of academic and quantitative research and simply cannot be answered by the current policymakers without help from academics. Now, let me just say a few words, I guess, more briefly on a few other international initiatives. NGFS, as many of you know, probably have been working with, has now expanded its membership to 80-something regulators, including central banks and supervisors that cover, I think, most of the economies, large economies already in the world. And the NGFS has recently developed a set of scenarios, what we call reference scenarios for climate risk analysis by central banks, by financial institutions. And I, in the past few years, served as chairman of 2 work streams under the NGFS, including its supervision work stream and now the research work stream. And under my work stream, we developed a couple of publications promoting the usage of environmental risk analysis methodologies. One of them, I guess you may have heard, is a collection of methodologies to be used by banks, asset managers, the insurance company to quantify the financial risk arising from these organizations' exposure to environmental and climate factors. And this document is as long as 600 pages. I think it's until now the by far most comprehensive collection of methodologies that are now, I think, very much used by a lot of organizations, financial firms. And the ongoing work which I'm undertaking as a chair of the research work stream under IIGF is to work with Nick Robin of Inspire to develop a research project on relationship between biodiversity and financial stability. Now, this is a relatively new topic, but I think it will become very important in the coming 3-5 years. We're in a stage of raising awareness that the investments have a huge impact on nature and biodiversity, which most of the investors or financial institutions are not fully aware. And also, the loss of biodiversity may have significant impact on financial stability through the generation of financial risks to individual financial firms, including the valuation of equity investments and the asset quality of their loan portfolios. And this is a study which we are hoping to be delivered by the beginning of next year, and paving the way for further research and further actions by regulators. And we're hopeful that some healthy discussion will be generated based on the study to convince regulators such as central banks and supervisors to begin thinking about requiring financial institutions to report the impact of the investment on biodiversity, and requiring them to report or analyze at least the impact of biodiversity loss on their operations. The third initiative I'd like to mention briefly is IPSF. It's International Platform for Sustainable Finance, under which a working group was formed more than a year ago. It's co-chaired by myself, representing China, and Marcel Haag, representing EU, on taxonomy. This working group is specifically working on common ground taxonomy based on the Chinese green bond taxonomy and the European sustainable finance taxonomy. The purpose is very simple. We want to generate a model taxonomy that's considered acceptable by both China and Europe. In fact, I think the standards used for the common ground taxonomy is higher than the Chinese taxonomy and higher than the European taxonomy. But once the common ground taxonomy is out, it could be used on a voluntary basis by Chinese issuers, for example, of green bonds, for them to issue green bonds in Europe, and it could be used by European issuer to issue green bonds in China. And it could also be used by other jurisdictions if they want to adopt the common ground taxonomy as their taxonomy on a voluntary basis. With this exercise, I think we are developing a possible approach towards enhancing consistency of taxonomy around the globe. One more initiative I'd like to mention, the ISO, which has set up a TC322. It's called Technical Committee on Sustainable Finance. And I am involved as a vice chair for the advisory group of this TC. The goal of this ISO TC is to develop what I call a bookshelf or a repository of sustainable finance standards. In the future, I'm envisaging many standards. These standards could be taxonomy, could be verification approach, could be impact assessment approach, could be risk analysis methodology, and they could cover bonds and stocks, funds, insurance, and many type of products. So it could be a matrix across products and across aspects of sustainable finance activities. And we may end up with, for example, 5x5 matrix with 25 standards to be hosted by ISO. So that's a job of this ISO technical committee, which is looking for the originator or designer of different kind of standards, which are largely by other organizations, and but they need to be made more consistent, between each other, rather than done on the sort of a segmented basis. And finally, just a word on Green Investment Principle for the Belt and Road. It was launched by China Green Finance Committee and the City of London back in 2018. The most important goal is to enhance the greenness of investment in emerging markets. And after proposing a set of 7 principles, we now have 40 signatories, which are largest financial institutions from China, from Europe, the UK, and many emerging market economies. And they collectively manage nearly 50 trillion US dollar. So they are representing the largest investors investing in emerging markets, especially in the infrastructure space. And within GIP, we've been building capacity through setting up different working groups and developing tools such as a carbon calculator for them to be more aware of the carbon implication, and developing standards or templates for disclosure so we can compare and measure their green performance. And annually, we're giving awards to the best performer within the GIP. So these are the few examples of the international initiative that China and myself being involved in. And finally, I think just take a couple minutes to say a few words on what China itself is doing on improving its sustainable finance or green finance system with a view to delivering its carbon neutrality goal. As you probably know that within our green financial system, we have 4 pillars. One is taxonomy, including loan taxonomy, green bond taxonomy, and green project taxonomy. We're now in the process of refining this taxonomy to make sure that the high carbon activities, even though they could serve the purpose of reducing air pollution, are not included in a new taxonomy because they need to be consistent with the net zero goal. And the second pillar is called disclosure. We have gradually improved disclosure standards, and the central bank governor, Yi Gang, has made a public statement that the financial institutions will be required to disclose environmental information on a mandatory basis. And we're helping my committee, Green Finance Committee, is helping the central bank in developing the templates for pilot studies on how to implement TCFD compliant disclosure within the financial institutions. And thirdly, it's about incentive, which we had before, but now needs to be strengthened and make them more directly related to carbon neutrality. And the central bank itself is considering launching a much larger incentive program, which will provide low-cost funding to low-carbon activities, low-carbon projects through the banking system. And finally, on products, which is the 4th pillar, we now have the largest green lending market in the world, which involves 13 trillion RMB outstanding loans. We're the 2nd largest green bond market, and we have 700 green funds. But still, these numbers, even though look large, but still very, very small relative to the requirement of carbon neutrality. We need to expand, I think, the proportion of our green loans in total loans by 100%, raising from the current 10% to 20%. We need to raise the proportion of green bonds in total bonds and proportion of ESG products in total asset management products by many, many multiples in order to meet the future demand from the real economy, which is moving towards carbon neutrality. So Mandy, I think I'll be stopping here. Once again, let me thank GRASFI for giving me this opportunity. And I wish the conference a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ma, for providing your insights from the perspectives of policymakers and emerging markets, and also for highlighting some of the key issues that G20 should concentrate on, and shedding light on the latest developments in other international initiatives, and also discussing some of China's progress recently. Thank you again for your great speech. Now, one of the highlights of this year's GRASFI conference is, of course, the 39 excellent papers presented as 13 paper sessions with a wide range of themes. The academic committee, Professor Bauer from Maastricht University, Professor Kerstin Lopatta from the University of Hamburg, and Professor Christoph Niedlepil from Fudan University. They have together decided on 5 paper prizes, which will be announced shortly. I am just as curious and excited as you are. So without further ado, Rob, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mengdi. Okay, hello to everyone. When I started this session at the beginning of Wednesday, I had some technical problems. Let's hope this is not going to happen now. Let me first introduce the committee. So the committee the academic committee consisted of 3 members, which is Kerstin Lopatta. She's now also, you can see her. Maybe Christoph, you also put on your camera. And Christoph Niedlepil, you've all seen him before. So what our task was is to set up a structure that people were going to submit papers, that they came in a structured way, that we were going to review them in a structured and consistent way, and not just us, but actually every single reviewer that was used in that procedure helped with that. So the task was to get papers in. That worked quite well. We had more than 150 submissions, or maybe even more than that, across quite a lot of disciplines. Some were more mature, and some papers were really starting, which is good, because we know we will have new papers also next year. And sometimes these new papers also had great ideas that we also put on the program. So in the end, we selected, because we were spaced, although you might not expect it in an online context, but there are some restrictions also on the space there, what you can do. And we selected 39 papers out of these 150 plus. There are many good papers also in these 39, because only if you're on the program, you can win a paper. So maybe some of you are now a bit disappointed, but if you're on the program, then you can win a paper. It was a tough choice for us. Every committee always says that, but it's actually true. You got 39 papers and you have to make a decision. And which attributes do you use to make that decision? One thing that makes it a bit easier is that next to the best paper that we have, we also have a few other papers. So if prizes, sorry, the best paper prize, we also have a few other prizes. There are in total 5 prizes that we are going to award. The first 4 will be awarded by me and Professor Kerstin Lopatta from the University of Hamburg. And the last prize will be awarded by our sponsor, the Bank Paribas Asset Management, and that will be Alexander Bernhardt. That will be at the end. So we start with the first prize now. I know that Kerstin is going to award that, and she's going to mention the prize, and then I put on the slides so that not everything is given away immediately. So first, maybe you say what the prize is and the topic, and then I will put it on. We don't hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, Rob. Yeah, let's do it like this. So the first prize is sponsored by Marjan Rural Commercial Bank, and the prize is going to Florian Kolestani-Seni from the Council on Economic Policies. And Rob is now putting it on. The paper has the title KROS, Climate Risk Adjusted Refinancing Operations. And let me give you a few words on the paper. So Chiara and Florian develop and evaluate a new concept based on the argument that markets are not pricing climate risk appropriately. And with their approach, they show that with the appropriate design of KROS, the central bank could influence bank lending in a way that induces the optimal allocation under its beliefs. And that's why the prize has the title GRASFI Best Novel Method Paper Prize. And you can see it's awarded with $1,500 US. Yeah, thank you so much for sending in such an innovative paper, and congratulations to the prize winners.
Thank you, Kerstin. So it always happens that if you do a prize ceremony, that suddenly DHL is at your door, but I'll just let them ring. Okay, let's go to the next prize. The next prize is issued by the CFA Institute. They have 2 prizes. Sorry, I'm making a mistake here. The next prize is by the Deutsche Börse, excuse me. And this prize is called the Best Asset Pricing paper prize, and it's going to Tingua Duan, Frank Weikali, and Quan Wen with their paper is Carbon Risk Price in the Cross-Section of Corporate Bond Returns. So why do they win this prize? First of all, in my view, and I tried it before myself, the topic of asset pricing in bond markets is a stepchild in empirical finance. So it's really great that people take into account climate finance or carbon risk in this particular case and corporate bond in one paper and really investigate it empirically well. It's a really rich empirical paper, taking into account also the literature that is coming from the equity markets, at least what you can use from that literature. And what I find is that apparently these investors in these markets are still underreacting to the news on carbon risk. So they find this underreaction, which has huge implications for the inefficiencies of the decisions that are made and also how markets are functioning. So maybe this will spur investors to take more into account what's going on in the carbon risk markets than they do so far. So I know that Frank Weikali is among us, and I think even Tingua Duan, if I'm correctly informed. So if you want, you can quickly show yourself and we give you a big hand of applause. So I give an applause, of course the audience can, but thank you very much for sending your paper here, really good paper. And congratulations with this prize. So that's the third speaker as well. So unfortunately, it's not like with the Oscars that you can now say give a speech. Unfortunately, we don't have the time for that. But drink a beer if you sit together, and if not, have fun this evening enjoying this prize. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Kerstin, you're next. You're muted still.
So the next, now you can hear me. So the next paper we are awarding is GRASFI Best Paper PhD Prize, and it's sponsored by the CF Institute. And the winning paper is When the Mainstream Matters, Coalition Composition in Collective Shareholder Activism on ESG Issues. And the author of the paper is Kevin Chua. So Kevin is a PhD candidate at London Business School, and in his research, he analyzes how shareholder activism influences firm strategies in relation to ESG issues. And the paper we have at hand, he examines how the composition of shareholder activist coalitions contributes to the successful engagement. And in this paper, he focuses on mutual funds as ESG activists. And interestingly, he finds that mainstream shareholder participation is in fact greater when activists are in close geographical proximity to each other, and conversely, when they are located distantly from targeted firms. So the paper is very innovative and is somehow at the final stage, I think. So Kevin, it's a great paper, and congratulations to you.
Okay, we continue. There's another prize issued by the CFA Institute Financial Analyst Journal. And I would like to thank Heidi Raubenheimer, who's also among us, for actually sponsoring these prizes. So thank you, CFA Institute. And that is a prize on sustainable investments. We also gave it last year. And there were quite a few papers on the topic. It was really tough. And actually, some of these papers were also competing for the best paper prize. But we decided to grant this prize to the paper, Climate Change and Long Horizon Portfolio Choice, Combining Theory and Empirics, by Matthijs Kozemans, Xander Hut, and Matthijs van Dijk. I know Xander is in the call as a potential prize winner. Thanks for being here. So why is this paper interesting? First of all, the most important decision that any investor makes is the strategic decision. So long horizon portfolio choice is really important, and especially for long horizon investors, obviously. And what they try to do here is to combine the climate change risks and uncertainties that exist into this long horizon portfolio choice. And there are not so many papers on the topic, and especially not papers who try to combine a theoretical framework with empirical analysis and a Bayesian analysis on top of that. When I read and also listen to your presentation, how you also mentioned that mean reversion might be reduced by climate change risk in the long term, that has huge implications for the way currently pension funds, insurance companies, and other long horizon investors are making decisions on risk taking. So, and they are all transforming right now. So this is a really important paper. And I really thank you again for submitting it. And with this, congratulations, Xander, and also co-authors with this achievement.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes, so now we go to the best paper prize, which is sort of the prize that sort of is finishing all up this whole ceremony. And for that, I will ask Alexander Bernhardt to do the talking. So Alexander, if you want, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rob. I'm Alex Bernhardt. I'm the Global Head of Sustainability Research for BNP Paribas Asset Management. Super excited to be here. I think this is a phenomenal event, and the research that we had the opportunity to review from dozens and dozens of academics was just awesome, and so much fun to read. Might sound like I'm being disingenuous, but I'm not. I'm honestly felt that it was very, very intriguing and interesting. For us at BNP Asset Management, it's really important to sponsor this program because academic research plays a really significant role in a lot of the work that we do, as well as the broader industry. And certainly in the field of sustainable finance, academic research has really led the way in many respects in trying to drive practice into a more progressive and sustainable way, which is really great. I'm very honored to be able to announce the winner of the grand prize here today. And so I think just to preface it a little bit, I think what you heard from Dr. Mahjong at the beginning here in the keynote remarks is really on point with some of the topics that this paper in particular look to analyze. And as many of us in the European financial industry in particular are enmeshed in trying to comply with the SFDR and other regulatory compliance issues, it helps us to understand the importance of regulatory disclosure, again, that we've all fought for, even when we're in the weeds trying to figure out how to make these regulations work in practice. And so to make this a little bit more official and a little bit more like the Oscars, I brought the official GRASFI envelope here, which I'm going to open. And the winner is the effects of mandatory ESG disclosure around the world. By Luke Kruger,
Congratulations.
Dragon Tang, and Rui.
Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to close the slide so that maybe the winner can come up, that we can all see him very well next to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Rui, also for your co-authors.
Thanks.
So you're allowed to say something extra because you're the overall best prize winner. So any reaction?
Yeah, actually, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the program committee and all your efforts and time to review all the papers, especially. Actually, I enjoy a lot from this conference. We learned a lot. So, and also, I would like to thank this program for the GRASFI to give us this platform to share our work with the scholars and practitioners and policymakers. We receive lots of feedback to improve the quality of the paper. So I just want to say on behalf of all the co-authors, thanks all of you very much.
Okay, thanks. Final word for the sponsor.
Congratulations, Rui, and thank you for the insights on this important topic. I mean, again, it's important to recognize that disclosure really helps with the price finding mechanisms that markets are, and helps to eliminate or minimize downside risk, which is all these important findings that you highlighted are really interesting. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alex, and thank you, Rui. So this gives me the opportunity also to, on behalf of GRASFI, sort of do some closing notes. First of all, Alex, thank you, BNP Paribas, for being a very generous sponsor, not just for this conference, but also we decided to cooperate further also in the field of supporting PhD students in the future. You will hear more of us after the GRASFI board meeting in September, what that actually will entail. But so we encourage you to have a look at that, all of your institutions, and see whether you can be part of that. I think the most important part of any conference is the people that submit papers and that actually also join the sessions. And there were many of those. So I would really like to thank you for submitting papers. I would like to thank you for being in the sessions, even if you did not present. That also holds for the practitioners in the room. So that is all nice. But of course, if there is no programming committee, there's nothing to actually broadcast or to organize. So a really big thank you goes to the KUFE team that did a tremendous job in my opinion in organizing this. This is quite a tough task. In the beginning, they didn't know whether it is going to be an in-person event or an online event. So we're working on two strands here. At some point, we had to make a decision, and we decided, luckily, the right one, namely online, because traveling was not an option. And then in that context, it's not so easy to organize a conference. However, they did really well, and I would like to thank specifically, and I'm definitely forgetting people, but let me just mention these people now and tell the others also my thanks. Wang Yao, obviously, as a representative of KUFE, Christoph Nederpiel as well, and also Mengdi Yue and Ying Yan. I hope I pronounce it well. You really helped us, not just before, but also during the week, organizing this well. And in the back, you see a whole team of the event. I would like to single out Patricia Ferrari, who has not just done this today, but also last year and in Oxford in a tremendous way. So it all worked seamlessly. It looked very professional, also on the website. So thank you very much. And I guess when you wake up tomorrow and there is no GRASFI, you still want to see something. Yes, you can at some point. I'm not sure whether it's tomorrow actually. All these broadcasts will be in the free domain, in the public domain, available to you. So you can also show them to others. You can re-evaluate your own presentation if that is necessary, and learn more than you could do, because of course, because of the parallel sessions, you couldn't see everything at live sessions. With that, on behalf of the GRASFI board, so also on behalf of the chair, the co-chair, Ben Caldecott, Ulrich Volz, and all the other board members, thank you for participating and thank you for organizing it. And I now turn the floor to Wang Yao.
Thank you, Rob. Dear colleagues, friends, and the audience across the globe, as the host of the 4th GRASFI annual conference, I want to thank all of you who have made it such a great success. The past 4 days were packed with inspiring presentations, innovative ideas, and exciting discussion across a wide range of sustainable finance areas. And congratulations to the paper prize winners and authors of all 39 papers selected for presentation at the conference. Your work has been extremely valuable for advancing the sustainable finance agenda. I want to take this opportunity to thank Executive Committee with Professor Rob Bauer, Ben Caldecott, Ulrich Volz, and Christoph Nederpiel, who have been overseeing the planning and organization of this conference in the past several months. We are also very grateful for the support from the academic committee, conference committee, our generous sponsor, BNP Paribas Asset Management, and other paper prize sponsors, including CFA Institute Financial Analyst Journal, Dutch Boss Group, and the Maastricht Rural Commercial Bank. Finally, I want to thank the KUFE staff and the technical support team for their hard work behind the scenes to ensure that all the sessions run smoothly. It was an honor for the International Institute of Green Finance of KUFE to host the GRASFI conference this year and do our little part in accelerating the momentum in sustainable finance in Asia and internationally. As Ben mentioned in the welcome note, next year's GRASFI conference will be hosted by the University of Zurich. Now please welcome Professor Falco Pitzold, Director of the Center for Sustainable Finance and Private Wealth at the University of Zurich. Professor Falco.
Wonderful. So thank you very much. And just a few words about the GRASFI 2022 conference, which will be at the University of Zurich, September 5 to 7, 2022. We are, of course, very, very much looking forward to hopefully again reconvene in person and have a fantastic exchange with all of you. Now, Zurich, of course, I might be biased, but is a very beautiful place. And this is one of the 3 reasons why I hope that you will feel particularly excited about coming to the GRASFI conference 2022 in Zurich. The first reason being that it's really an absolutely beautiful and fantastic place. Here, photo taken from, really the view over the city with a beautiful lake, Zurich, and the Alps in the background. And that's really what it looks like. So first reason to be very, very excited, I hope, to come to GRASFI 2022, hopefully in person, is that it is absolutely a beautiful place and very, very conducive really for intellectual exchange. Now, I think a second reason why Zurich will be an absolutely beautiful and perfect place for GRASFI to happen is basically industry being placed here, right? So Zurich is the global hub for example, private wealth management. We see here a picture of Paradeplatz, which is sort of a main square in Zurich, which hosts the global headquarter of not only UBS, but also Credit Suisse, some of the largest banks in the private banking scene, but also in banking generally, right? And of course, many, many other banks also based here. For example, Julius Baer, the largest pure play private bank in the world, is also based here. And of course, many other players as well, Swiss Re and so on. And most importantly, a lot of the innovators really in sustainable finance also really originate and are based in Zurich, in particular, for example, in the microfinance space. So of course, we're going to leverage that also a lot for the conference, this very, very cool proximity to industry and to sustainable investing players from practice. And now the third reason why I hope you're going to be very excited and looking forward to coming to GRASFI in Zurich then next year. Well, of course, the University of Zurich itself. If you see here again, this beautiful panoramic picture from Zurich, you see this little arrow over there. This tower actually with a green roof is actually the tower of the University of Zurich. And I'm sure actually in that tower, we're gonna have some very nice dinners and drinks also, etc. University of Zurich, some of you may know, some might not know. It's a very, very beautiful, of course, building, about 26,000 students in all different ways of research. Also actually a historical university. So University of Zurich was founded in 1833. Actually the first university in Europe to be founded by a democratic state and not founded by a monarchy or by a church, and also quite pragmatic in things such as women joining. She's the second university that allowed women to join after Sorbonne in 1866. Also, of course, a really heavy intellectual tradition, about 12 Nobel Prizes here. And one thing that the University of Zurich people, of course, are proud of is that actually Albert Einstein in 1905 submitted his PhD here at University of Zurich. So it's a beautiful place. We're very close to industry, the key industry players, which we will bring into the GRASFI 2022 conference. And of course, University of Zurich itself is a fantastic hub and very vibrant in research, and in particular in sustainable finance research. The people you're going to be in touch with include, of course, myself. I run the Center for Sustainable Finance and Private Wealth. It's an entity is focused on exactly that topic. And also my colleague Inke Nyborg, who's also here with us right now, who's the director of the Center of Competence for Sustainable Finance, which is an overarching entity that really brings together many, many different professors from all different types of research areas to work together on sustainable finance. It again, a very, very vibrant piece of research here at the University of Zurich. So we're very, very much looking forward to welcoming you here with us, September 5 to 7 in 2022. Please note it in your calendars already now. And of course, all the further communication will still be coming towards you regarding the submission processes, etc. So without further ado, let me hand back to Professor Wang Jiao, and we are greatly looking forward to welcoming you to Zurich next year. Thank you very much. I think you have to turn your microphone on, Professor.
Sorry. Oh yeah,
Sorry. Thank you, Falco, and many thanks for your kind remarks, invitations, and for the introduction about Zurich. We are very looking forward to the 5th GRASFI conference in beautiful Zurich, and cannot wait for all the upcoming developments in research that will be featured there. Once again, thank you all who participated in the conference, and see you next year. Bye-bye. Maybe, so we are okay now?
Just to be clear for everyone, the conference is over.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all.